So let's go back to our chart now. And now we're going to start focusing on a few more things.
So you can all see that big, okay, we're looking at a sunrise chart, but you can see how all of these planets are on the left side clustered around the ascendant. So we're still thinking that if we did have a birth time, we'd see the balance of we'd still see that configuration of everything on the left, but we don't know.
So what we're looking at here, I'm just going to go aspect by aspect, looking at the key aspects in the Ptolemaic aspects, which are conjunctions, squares, oppositions, and we'll bring in a trine also. And this first one is, you see the big red line, you see the sun in Aquarius opposite Jupiter in Leo, which is a very, very important statement. You're going to see at the bottom of the screen, I have a midpoint listed, and it says key midpoint AP equals Jupiter Pluto. Now we're going to explain that. If you are not into midpoints yet, don't worry. We're going to explain it in a couple slides here, but that's a key midpoint that we both anticipated she would probably have, and she did. I mean, that's when you go, yes, as soon as you see it, because the astrologer anticipates it. All right, so let's talk about Sun opposite Jupiter, and let's go into depth on this. So Jupiter in the horoscope is our need for reward, how we need to have reward. So Jupiter in Leo, what do you have to say about that?
Well, Jupiter is the principle of expansion. It makes things bigger for better or worse. You know, Jupiter, yes, some people say, oh, I'm having Jupiter on my sun. That's really good. Well, yes, unless you're being, but it also could blow up something that is not as pleasant to experience. So for better or worse, Leo is an energy. It's a fiery, regal entitlement. It's a player in all senses of the word. It could be a player on a stage. It could be a player at a party, or it could be a player meaning somebody who really moves and shakes around. So we have this expansive need for this regal entitlement player energy opposing. So there's a tension there with her sun. So the energy of expansion and royal entitlement on her sun is going to give her potentially a sense of ego, sun blowing up, aggrandizement.
A lot of confidence. A lot of confidence.
Confidence would be an upside potential. Yeah.
And Jupiter in Leo needs to have ego reward. So when we put the need for reward in the sign Leo, it's, I want to be applauded. I want to be special. I want to be loved. I want attention. So she's described as entitled, and many people described her as mean, which I put as the queen complex, which often, if you have Moon in Leo, Mars in Leo, Jupiter in Leo, the shadow side of that could be the king or queen complex that is too big, too exaggerated if it's lived on the shadow side.
The queen that doesn't understand that the best queens are the ones that serve their people.
Yes.
You can be a noble queen. You can be a queen who is kind and gives all of her energy to teaching and nurturing, and but in this case, a mean queen is a shadow side of a mean queen is a shadow side of a Leo energy in the horoscope.
Now there are stories that Anna was a very generous tipper. Now generosity is a Jupiter thing. You know, you have somebody with Sun conjunct square or opposite Jupiter, and often you find generosity. Now, she was very generous in her tipping. She handed out $100 bills to anybody in a service capacity. So she would order a drink and give a $100 bill. Somebody would take in her bags to the hotel and she'd give the $100 bill. But I always felt that that was probably her need to buy love and manipulate people through power, which could have been the Jupiter in Leo, which is I am more elevated than you, and you are going to quickly see my status because I'm going to show you because I know what you need and want.
Yes, a grand gesture, but the
Mhm.
gesture really doesn't necessarily have, there's not much depth there. It's a showy statement.
Mhm. And she chose to pretend that she was from an aristocratic family. That is so Jupiter and Leo. I mean, it's, I am very special. I'm from a very special family. Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Trust fund, meaning somebody who had a family dynamic that was set up to support the children and the legacy. I think that's because I don't know. She never said she was from royalty or anything, but this sense
no.
of having this legacy that we would associate with maybe people who are profiled in Town and Country,
Yes.
that kind of
She
thing.
projected it. She projected elevated status.
Status.
Mhm. Absolute elevated status, which is Jupiter Leo gone bad.
Retrograde even perhaps.
Yes, it was
because
retrograde.
it is retrograde. All that energy turned inward, that, yeah.
And she projected a sense of glamour and
Mhm.
was attracted to glamour, attracted to shiny things, which is Leo.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so that's her sun opposite Jupiter and Leo. And now we need to talk about this amazing and very important midpoint. So a midpoint is a halfway point between two planets. When we go back to her chart in a moment, we'll point to where that halfway mark is between Jupiter and Pluto. One of the things Noel Till always talked about, and he was brilliant in this, he brought it forward. He talked about the Aries point. So first of all, we have to talk about the Aries point. Aries point is located in the zodiac at 0 degree of any cardinal sign. Cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. The beginning of the season, whatever season we are in, the Aries point activation happens when that season comes, makes it its announcement that I'm here. So planets or midpoints at the Aries point tend to have very high visibility potential, right?
They are turning points. If we get into the technical language, it's 0 degrees of the cardinal signs. The cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and cardinal from the Latin turning point. It's that upon something turns. So if you have something, a planet or configured, or even a midpoint configured at one of these turning points, you could see how your whole life might revolve around the potential embodied in that prominent point in the chart.
And to put it graphically in a visual term, it's like a big spotlight highlights that midpoint or planet or angle, whatever point happens to be at the Aries point. Now, the orb, if you are an astrologer, the orb begins at 29 degree mutable and it extends all the way to 1 cardinal. So when you find midpoints or planets between 29 mutable and 1 cardinal, they are at the Aries point and it's a high visibility potential. Now, when we add the Jupiter-Pluto midpoint, this is called the wealth and success midpoint. When Jupiter-Pluto midpoint is conferred in a midpoint picture, meaning it may be connected to a planet in your chart, and in this case, Anna Delvey's Jupiter-Pluto was at the Aries point. It was actually at 29 degree Virgo. Jupiter-Pluto midpoint being the wealth and success midpoint at the Aries point, which confers high visibility. It's in a sense saying this is how she's going to be seen. She's going to be seen through the lens of that combination of Jupiter-Pluto. Okay.
Or she will attract those elements into her life. They'll stick to her like, this will stick to her like, I don't know, like spaghetti sauce on a white shirt.
But it opens the door for success. It opens the door for wealth. It makes it easier, but it also, in the way I view a horoscope, I look at it from a life purpose point of view. It says to me that part of her purpose is to tap into that, to experience it, to play around with it. And if you recall the chart that we showed, her Jupiter-Pluto midpoint is 29 degree Virgo. So it's at the 29th degree of the mutable signs, but it's at that Aries point.
And another person who was in the news for a number of years, who is famous for their associations with money and power, is Jeffrey Epstein. When you look at what we know of his horoscope, because we don't have a birth time, and astrologers think, how in the world could this person be so comfortable and welcome in these circles of money and power? And then you see this midpoint, the same thing that Anna Delvey has, AP equals Jupiter Pluto. And it's like, of course, that's a marker for that potential.
We teach our students to watch for this. Now, it doesn't absolutely mean if you have AP, Jupiter, Pluto, midpoint, you are going to be wealthy and successful and famous and so forth. It says the potential is there because each person lives their chart to a certain dimension and they have the free will. They may be known in their little small city.
In their little pond, whatever pond you're swimming in, you're likely to be someone who is known for associations with people within your circle.
And you may underachieve and not activate it at all. All right. So 60 Minutes Australia, in that interview, she also said, when he asked her about handing out these $100 tips, people are ridiculous. If someone is impressed by a $100 bill, I don't know what to tell them. And it was this very, I am so superior. I mean, they're ridiculous. These little, in a sense, what I got peons. When I listened, this piece of dirt on the floor that I can step on. I mean, come on.
This bug on my shoe. Yeah.
She was in defensive mode then, that's for sure.
Exactly. She was exactly. It's the defense, the argument for the defensive posture.
So here's her chart again. By the way, the midpoint between Jupiter and Pluto would be the halfway point right here, 29-degree Virgo, just so you see it. Okay, so now we're going to explore another dimension in her chart, which is very, very important. And that is her Sun in Aquarius was conjunct Saturn at 28 degrees Capricorn, the North Node at 28 Capricorn. And Saturn was in what's called the Oriental position, which means Saturn rose right before the Sun. It's a technical term. It means if you find the Sun in the chart and you go clockwise, the first planet you come to is going to be the Oriental planet. But the Oriental planet says a lot, especially for vocational profiling. So see this signature. We're going to go to the next slide. We're going to explain it. Sun, Saturn, nodal axis, and Saturn's in Capricorn, which makes a difference too. It's in its own sign. And the nodal axis is kind of part of our destiny, part of our life purpose energy, part of what we are here to develop. So we get a high dose of ambition and achievement, right?
Absolutely.
When we see Saturn, especially Saturn in Capricorn, there's often also a business savvy about them, but it's achievement, and it's achievement with Saturn in Capricorn in hierarchy, in structure, in system, in strategy, right?
And also often in patriarchy. So it's interesting that her Saturn is so strong in her horoscope. And when you read about how she presented herself over and over again, this emphasis on my father, this, my father, that, my father, father.
Excellent point. Yep. And she understood structure, hierarchy, and authority. She knew how to work the system. I mean, she had that kind of brain. And of course she would. With Saturn in Capricorn. Saturn Oriental, especially in vocational profiling, tends to suggest somebody who understands the patience it takes to build a business, but understands business in general.
Yeah, and is someone who has the potential to oversee, generate, work on a long-term project. The kind of stuff that she actually told people she was doing with her corporation. Of course, it would be a company, that she had a business, and these ginormous projects that she was saying that she was trying to make happen. She does have that potential in there. If we could just channel it in some measure of reality, yeah, she could do it.
And she cut to the chase. She was a bottom line kind of person, and business is business. Business is business. And again, she didn't tend to manifest the empathy or the sensitivity to how that affected other people. Business is business. I'm going to achieve what I need to achieve. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So let's go back to her chart. And we will view one more thing, which is Mars in Gemini. So here we see Mars, which is the planet of how we need to apply energy, right? How we need to be efficient. And it's in the sign Gemini, and it makes this beautiful trine to her sun in Aquarius. All right, so let's talk about that. Mars in Gemini, especially if she has moon in Aries, is important because Mars is the ruler of her moon. In that case, Mars rules Aries. So Mars in Gemini can be very glib. High communication potential.
A fast talker.
Mars
is speed. Gemini is, can you talk?
Can you sell?
Always selling, yes.
And tapped in, having all the information. Sometimes Mars and Gemini can be an information junkie. Has a hard time toning down how much information, how much thought, how much communication. But people said that she was very charming sometimes. I mean, of course, now I'm contradicting myself. They also said she was mean and she was abrupt, but other people said she was very charming and childlike.
Double talk. Yes. Mars in Gemini there's a two-sidedness to this Gemini. And we are, you have what's interesting in this horoscope. We have this one pattern that we called out, the Sun opposition Jupiter, which is this expansive, indulgent, grand. I am the queen. I'm fun. I'm the life of the party. And then we also have this other pattern that we talked about in the other slide, where the heaviness, the controlling energy of Saturn, necessary control, squeezing that Aquarius sun. And also, I don't know if we're going to get to this later, but also potentially squaring her moon, which is a severity and a streamlining. And we often see, all the time, we will see these seeming apparent contradictions in a horoscope. And then you say to your client, well, how are you going to make that work? You have these contradictions, you make it work. So that's how this woman could go, how anyone could reflect these two faces, which is
sometimes Gemini. Sometimes when I have a client with these kinds of contradictory energy flows, I'll say, there are two people in this horoscope, or sometimes more than two. But in Anna's case, and you're right, we do need to talk about her moon, if it is in Aries and if it's in late Aries, would be square her Saturn. And that's an important concept. It just adds to the mix about this need to achieve. And not everybody with Saturn in Capricorn is going to be absolute dry, business is business. I don't care how you feel. Again, there's a spectrum of expression, but we know how she lived her chart because, we're studying this case.
Yeah.
Okay, so now there are 3 other planets in Capricorn. It adds to the mix. So again, when we go back to there's more than one person in this horoscope. There's the fiery moon in Aries, if she has moon in Aries. There's the expansive, confident Jupiter in Leo energy. There's the chatty Mars in Gemini, which can be charming if it needed to be charming. But then there's all this incredible administrative, structured, strategic Capricorn flow. So she had Neptune, Uranus, Mercury conjunct in Capricorn. And that was, that's very, very potent. And it's important because if we think about her Mars in Gemini, the ruler of Gemini is Mercury. So we want to say, okay, her energy flows to Gemini matters. She applies her energy in a Gemini way, which is chatting, talking, information, connecting, social. It's very, very social. The air signs are all very social. Then we need to look at her Mercury. Mercury is how you need to think, how you need to communicate. And her Mercury is in administrative Capricorn, conjunct Uranus, conjunct Neptune. Whew. So let's talk about that. So if we're talking about what the signature for someone who is a con artist, if somebody is using their chart in that way to lie, to deceive, to con, we naturally think, gee, I've got to find out if they've got a strong Neptunian signature in their chart, right?
Especially configured with Mercury.
And that's not to say if you have Mercury, Neptune, conjunct, square, or opposite in your chart, that you're a con artist. We are not saying that. Let's be very clear, right?
No, we're not saying that, but we're saying that there is a need in matters of thinking for vision, idealism, imagination,
and creativity.
You could be a fabulous improvisational actress, perhaps improv actor, because you can easily step into take on the persona of many different characters. That could be very helpful, where you have that fluidity of thought. But you may also have some issues with fact versus fiction in ways that are unhealthy.
Neptune used badly can deceive. If Neptune flows into the shadow, it can be lying, it can be deception, it can be pulling the wool over somebody's eyes. I'm careful here because I see far too often on blogs or social media posts that people will lump everybody into the negative connotation with Neptune. And there's a very elevated spiritual part of Neptune also. But when we put Uranus in the mix, Uranus is electricity. It is speed. It is innovation.
Disruption.
Disruption. But it's also the maverick mentality, the need to be independent and original.
The literal maverick mentality when configured with Mercury. Yes, the maverick Uranus Mercury mentality.
Interestingly, some of the quotes that we have shared already, you get this sense that she speaks very quickly, which is typical for Moon and Aries. But when you have Mercury, Uranus, and then Mars and Gemini, it can be speaking before you really processed it through your brain. It came out your mouth and then you went, oh, did I really just say that? Oh, well, carry on.
Making it up as you go along. And then you say these things and then, okay, well, I have to live this because I just said it.
Or so she said what she was really feeling and then went, ooh, I should have put a little spin on that instead. But it's like you can't control what you're saying sometimes when Mercury, Uranus, because it's electricity and it's so fast. It's just these innovated pops of energy that come out. So this is a very dynamic and important configuration. Mercury, Uranus, Neptune, visionary, innovative, electric, and
a groundbreaker.
Groundbreaker. But it slid into the deception and delusion. She created a story and then she sold it. She sold the story. She lived it. It became her reality. All right. One of the things she did is she applied for a $22 million loan because she wanted to start the Anna Delvey Foundation, which was, do you want to describe what she wanted to start that company?
She envisioned, there was this gorgeous property in Manhattan, beautiful 6 or 7 story historic property. And she had this vision of creating a social club that was also for the social club for the rich and famous and everybody, and with strong themes of art. We're going to talk about the need for artistry in her horoscope. So she wanted there to be like big art galleries, and everybody who was anybody would go to this club, and there were going to be 4 restaurants and a German bakery. And it was going to be, and there are clubs like this here in New York. And so, but she just wanted to do it on an even grander scale.
Mm-hmm. And the creativity also flows with Neptune, Mercury, as well as one other thing we're going to mention, which echoes and reinforces it. So she applied for this loan, and she actually, because she was saying, I'm going to get this big trust. I'm going to get this big trust. But before I get it, because my father, is taking his time to give it to me, I need to get the loan. She forged documents and posed as the imaginary man she created to verify her fortune. And she said in one interview, I was amazed how easy that was.
Yeah, she just said, oh, my family advisor, Peter Henneke, will be in touch. And then she, I believe she established an email account for this person. And then at some point during the effort to get the loan, when something didn't come through, she killed him off and then replaced him with another family trust advisor. And you have these, high profile, allegedly experienced, mostly men in the financial world, in high places, just taking her at her word and going along with the charade, just going, okay, yeah, makes sense.
She had persuasive power.
She has, and she still does.
And
she has persuasive powers.
Yes.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, if you watch her in the 60-Minute Australia interview or some other interviews, she does this a lot when she's talking. She'll talk and she'll tilt her head. And in body language, when a woman does that, if you do it purposefully, you are exposing the part of your neck that makes you very vulnerable, and it signals to a man, I'm very vulnerable. And it signals something to a man to pull them in. It is a very persuasive kind of body language. She convinced that bank or a bank to give her $100,000 overdraft. And that saved the day because she was running up these huge bills in all these hotels. She would hotel hop. She would live in these very, very expensive hotels, and then she'd usually run out on the bill, and it was starting to catch up with her. Mm-hmm. And so she got this $100,000 overdraft, and she was able to pay a few of those things off so that they didn't catch her right away. So when 60 Minutes Australia asked about the Anna Delvey Foundation, you got to watch it. You just got to watch it. She said, well, I had this project and this vision, and it probably would have worked out if I did have the money.
Yeah.
So basically, it would have worked. So big deal if it wasn't real. It would have worked. Yeah. I'm justifying it. Ego justification, right?
Yeah. She has a great idea. And it was easy for her to get many people of certain status because she had this entree through the fashion world and was able to connect with all these people who actually did work for her without being paid up front. There was something like an 83-page PDF, that she business planned for her foundation. She had extremely talented people with strong reputations who were willing to put her vision on paper.
And once again, that Capricorn energy can be very, very good at delegating. Uh-huh. That's the managerial energy.
Things happen.
Mm-hmm. You do this, you do that, you do this. This is what I want. I'm in charge. Okay, now report to me and tell me when it's done. Mm-hmm. And that's what she did. So the interviewer said, you don't think you've conned anybody? She said, no. Just flat out, no. Oh, I thought that was interesting. So Then he said, but your whole business was just this house of cards. And again, ego justification. So many businesses are just a house of cards. You just don't know about it. I don't see this as a crime at all.
And you know what? She's right.
Well, she is right.
There are plenty of stories of businesses that are, look really great on paper and may have fantastic stock value. But if you started kicking the tires, you would say, well, wait a minute, what's really there? She's right.
She's right. But It did make it a crime in this case.
Yes, it did. Yeah,
forging documents.
It's forging documents. Yeah, but she's right about that. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And that is her special way where she really could say it like it is. The Capricorn energy, the moon in Aries, potentially, So we go back to her chart now and we talk about another part that is very important.
Yes.
Which is the natal signature. And, all these aspects we're talking about are independent of birth time. The sun opposite Jupiter, doesn't matter what time of day, she still has that. The Neptune, Uranus, Mercury, she still has that conjunction. And this is another one. Pluto square Venus, or Venus square Pluto. And Pluto's in its own sign in modern astrology. It's in Scorpio. And Venus is in Aquarius. What's so fascinating about Venus in Aquarius is this is somebody who studies human behavior, studies social patterns, because Aquarius is an air sign and is very, very, very social.
And Venus in Aquarius is also, and you can quote me on this, I love you, but don't take it personally. So when you're talking about the planets and whether or not, it's like, where can they go for support? Who can they talk to in the horoscope? And with Venus in Aquarius, the only connection we know for sure, the only other kid in the sandbox for sure is it's Pluto. We know that Venus, meaning who, what, how she needs to love, her social expression, her values. I mean, if she does have moon in Aries and it's a little, early birth time, maybe her Venus can talk to her Aries moon. Maybe it will be connected. But otherwise, the one thing we know for sure is that her values, her social expression can talk to Pluto. Power, resources, extremes.
And here's the look for Pluto square Venus. It's a steely-eyed square. It's calculating. I have Pluto square Venus in my chart, and I don't forge things. I don't manipulate people. I don't dominate. Again, so we're talking about if Pluto square Venus is used badly, it can go this other direction. Venus is the social energy, how you need to connect with others. Pluto square Venus can also be, I need to connect deeply, profoundly. I need to study social patterns with passion. And it is one thing I do in astrology, my clients are going through deep, profound issues, and it engages my Pluto square Venus. So we're going to talk about this for Anna Sorokin, in the shadow form, because I think it manifested in the shadow form. Okay. So she did have a natural and deep understanding of social patterns. She could read the room. She could look at people and know who she could manipulate, who to approach. She obviously, because she did it, right?
Yeah.
But Pluto can be connected to persuasion, can also be connected to manipulation. It's power.
Puppet master, puppet mistress, pulling strings to get things done. That's, we could see that in how she operated in the world. Pull the string.
Yep. And when we once again consider that stellium she had in Capricorn, and if you're not an astrologer, a stellium means a grouping of planets in one sign. So she had that Capricorn grouping with Mercury, Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn, and the North Node in Capricorn. And Capricorn is administrative, business is business, bottom line kind of achievement energy. And engaged with Pluto square Venus, it could get ruthless. And that's a lot of times how you get, you move forward in business. You get ahead in business with ruthlessness.
Business. Yeah, that's just business.
And power and control trips.
And that, again, that another thing, that ruthlessness, we were talking about the Aries point, another pattern that Anna has at the Aries point of prominence is Mars, the energy of action, and Saturn, the discipline and control and ambition, prominently, they are also at the Aries point. So we could see how she has the potential to become known for how she executes this ambitious plan. It's going to be big and famous, potentially.
So let's say that again for clarity's sake. What we are talking about is she has the Mars-Saturn midpoint. The halfway point between Mars and Saturn falls at the Aries point for Anna Delvey. And, I always look for midpoints at the Aries points or planets, because again, it is how the person will be seen, how they want to be seen.
They need to be seen.
Now, here's one other thing about Pluto-Venus contact. Pluto square, conjunct, or opposite Venus, in my spiritual astrology view, it can often be linked with the betrayal vibe. And that can be when a person is born with Pluto conjunct square opposite Venus, it could be a carryover from one or more lifetimes where you were betrayed, where you received major betrayal. And I believe that was the case for me. And then, of course, there was some betrayal, big time betrayal in my first big relationship. And it hurt to the core, echoing, oh, I remember this feeling. Ooh, yuck, And in that case, when you've received it in other lifetimes, you usually make a big commitment to never do it because you know how it feels. But in other cases, sometimes Pluto square Venus can be the one who does the betraying. And anybody has the choice. They can use this positively or negatively. And I mean, she betrayed her good friend Rachel, and we're going to get there in a moment and talk about this.
Yeah.
And here's a quote, again, from the New York Times with Emily Palmer as a writer, May 10th, 2019. And it just comes right out. My motive was never money. I was power hungry. Pluto square Venus, right? I think she was probably after money also, but I think she, again, when we go back to Mercury, Uranus, Neptune, I think that came out of her mouth and she went, oops. Can't take it back now.
Here's a rhetorical question. If she was just, if it was just about money, as a young woman in certain circles in New York, she could have married it.
That's true.
But that's not what she did.
And again, one of the things we do, trained by Noel Till, is we look at the horoscope in terms of needs. The planets all have needs. And all of those planets that she has in Capricorn needs to achieve, needs to build something lasting, needs to make things happen and move things forward.
And for herself, if there is this moon in Aries, for herself.
So now we go into the betrayal part, potentially with Pluto square Venus, and we bring in somebody that considered Anna her good friend, and that is Rachel Williams. And here's the photo. Rachel is on the left, Anna is on the right. And they palled around for a while.
I'm just looking at this photograph of the gaze of each of these women. And, Rachel is, she seems, wide-eyed a little bit. And Anna has this penetrating, the penetrating
calculating
stare.
It's a calculating look. It's like, Yeah, and her head is tilted to the side.
And she's got her
She did that a lot. You expose your jugular vein. That's, look in body language experts, and they talk about that. Women who do that are saying, I trust you. And it engages and pulls them in. But you're exactly right. This photo says a lot. And Rachel really considered Anna a good pal. So in 2017, Anna needed to leave the country for a bit to reset her visa.
That's what she said.
So she proposed a trip with Rachel and a few other people, her personal trainer, and they brought a videographer. And they went to Morocco. And as Anna would do, she would leave other people holding the tab over and over and over. Oh, I'll pay you later. Oh, I forgot my credit card, or this credit card's not working. Can you please just pay for it? And I'll pay you later. And she even did that for the airfare down to Morocco. I think she had someone else pay for that.
She said, I watched an interview with Rachel Williams this morning. I'd seen it before, and I believe what she said was she proposed this trip with the four of them, and they bought the tickets the day before they left. And what Anna said, I believe this is what Rachel said, don't quote me, she said, oh, my credit card's not working. And Rachel's like, okay, well, I'll put these 4 one-way tickets, and they would all be flying first class, bought the day before. Who does this? Why not 7-day super savers or 20? I mean, but it's impulsive, this impulsive, thing. And so that's what happened. It seems as if they didn't have return trips booked. It's just fascinating. And then Rachel put it on her card.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Which was a bit idealistic. Rachel completely trusted Anna. Mm-hmm. Anna had been paying for all kinds of really fancy dinners and all these posh places they would go. And usually Anna paid in cash. So she would pay cash, and then they would see her tipping with these $100 bills. So there's always this assumption.
Or what happened? No, I want to say this is important. This is important in the calculating part of it. Rachel would go to Anna's hotel, and they would have dinner in the hotel restaurant. So it's not that Anna picked up the tab. She signed the dinner over to her room. So it wasn't, but it was as if she was picking up the tab, but she wasn't.
Right.
So there's this point. Calculated strategy, how she's pulling strings, working the system, as her horoscope beautifully gives her, tremendous skills to do.
And at one point she owed $30,000 to one of the big hotels in New York City.
Right. Exactly.
She ran up the tab to $30,000, and they realized we don't have a credit card on file. Mm-hmm. She had bamboozled them, used her Mars and Gemini to distract them, and let her have entrance and stay there and run up these big tabs. And then they realized it's like they were coming out of hypnosis.
A fog.
Uh-huh.
It's like her brain, like Anna's brain walks into the room accompanied by Neptune with all this fog and pixie dust. Mm-hmm. And so the minute you make contact, and if you had let's just say you had a planet in your own personal horoscope that made contact with that little cluster of Capricorn foggy planets, you could be bamboozled by literally coming into contact with this person. We're talking about synastry and compatibility here, but that's how horoscopes and how people can make an impact on each other. There would be a personal connection to that fogginess.
The other thing is, if you use a Star Wars analogy, Anna used the Force.
Yes.
And one of the birth times, now we're skipping ahead just for a second, we'll get back to it.
Yeah.
But if we were to rectify her chart, if we were to do the process of trying to figure out what her birth time might be, I personally want to put her natal Pluto conjunct the ascendant, but we'll get there. Yeah, I'm getting ahead now, but that's the Force in Star Wars terms.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
This isn't the credit card you want.
This isn't the credit card you want.
So on this Morocco trip, Anna decides to book them, and she had told them, this is an all expense paid trip. You're coming. And she wanted the videographer to document part of it. And it was, what was it, $7,000 a night at
something
this?
Like that. Yeah.
$7,000.
Yeah.
And so they're there. And what happened was, it was a short time before, they cornered Anna and said, we need a credit card on file. You don't have one. You need to get, and they started pressuring her. And it was a very awkward situation. And finally, Anna said, well, try this, try that, and nothing would work. So Rachel felt the pressure and offered her credit card, saying, well, this is just going to be a temporary, you're just going to, use this to authorize our stay. You're not really going to charge it, right? Oh, right.
Right.
But they did. And the charge ended up being $62,000, which was more than Rachel's salary for the year. But Rachel didn't know this until she got back to New York.
Yes, because she left before. Yeah, it's fascinating. This one plot point with the trainer who went with them. And within, I think it seems as if within 24 hours of her arrival, she got sick. And I think it's wonderful to just look at that, because she had to leave. She had to go back home. And how, there are times in life when it seems like something bad is happening, but it's actually the best thing that could ever happen, because the fact that this trainer was sick meant she got to leave, meant that she was taken out of this whole incident entirely at the moment. That's a non sequitur, but I don't know. I just felt like saying that.
Yeah. And if you watch interviews with the personal trainer, she was a very spiritual, philosophical, optimistic sort of person. And she said that was the universe looking out for me.
Yeah.
But Rachel wasn't so lucky. And
No.
Rachel, who thought Anna was her good friend. Let me just say this, if you watch Inventing Anna on Netflix, now how they portrayed Rachel was a dramatic portrayal. And it doesn't really jive with how Rachel says things happened or who she is. But here's the point I'm trying to make. In the Netflix series, you see Rachel saying, but Anna's my friend. Of course, she's not going to rip me off for $62,000. I know she's going to pay me. She didn't mean to lie. What Rachel Williams in the Netflix series is radiating is absolute idealism. Idealism, which is a pattern that we watch for in the horoscope, something we really talk about. Idealism is when people see the potential and not the reality. And the potential Rachel wanted to project onto Anna is honorable and nice, and she's my friend.
And she's for real, and she'll come through.
And it didn't happen.
No.
When they got back, and Rachel starts freaking out and starts pressuring Anna, I need to be paid. I need to be paid $62,000. Are you kidding me? And Anna keeps saying, the wire is on its way. It'll come. Here it is. She ended up, I think, paying her $5,000, but that was it.
$5,000. She got $5,000. Yeah.
Rachel had a gigantic wake-up call, but it took her a long time to come to the understanding. So when asked about this, Anna said, she's just some random girl in her 20s. Anyone who knows me doesn't believe any of that stuff.
It's so cold. That is so cold. We could call out all of the potentially cold patterns, the potential Sun-Saturn conjunction, the potential Venus-Pluto square with Venus in Aquarius, the potential Moon-Saturn square. It's so...
Use and abuse. Rachel got a big wake-up call. But Rachel ended up writing a book. Let me move the camera over here. So Rachel Williams on the left. And she worked for Vanity Fair. So she was already a writer or a
photo editor.
But the experience jolted her into a new level of awakening and awareness. So she wrote a book, My Friend Anna. And it's a best-selling book. I haven't read it, but I want to get it and read it. I'm curious. And this is what Anna was referring. Oh, she's just some random girl in her 20s. Anybody who knows me doesn't believe any of that stuff that Rachel wrote in the book. Yeah. So this is on my to-do list.
But who really knows her?
Exactly. And does she know herself? I don't think so.
I know.